In a city of 8 million dreams, some are screamed from rooftops, others are whispered into pillows at night. But the most powerful dreams are the ones that are sung when nobody is supposed to be listening. This is a story about a voice that was never meant to be heard. A voice that could mend a broken heart and build an empire. It's about a waitress named Lily O'Connell, a billionaire haunted by a ghost, and a tiny 32-second recording that would either save them both or shatter their lives into 1,000,000 pieces. What happens when a secret song becomes a public spectacle? The answer is more dramatic, more twisted, and more real than you could ever imagine. The Starlight Diner, a stubborn relic nestled between a gleaming new cannabis dispensary and a yoga studio in Hell's Kitchen, always smelled of 3 things: stale coffee-frying onions and the faint chemical sweetness of industrial-grade cleaner. For Lily O'Connell, this was the scent of survival. It was the perfume of another 16-hour double shift, another day closer to making rent another $1, toward the mountain of medical bills that felt more like a tombstone marking the grave of her dreams. At 24, Lily wore her exhaustion like a second uniform. It clung to her more stubbornly than her faded blue apron, accentuating the faint purple smudges beneath her deep green eyes. Her honey-blonde hair was perpetually wrangled into a loose, messy bun from which wisps would escape, to dance around her temples as she rushed from booth to counter. She was a phantom in the diner, efficient and unobtrusive, her movements a well-rehearsed ballet of pouring coffee-wiping spills and balancing plates along the length of her arm. Most customers barely saw her. She was just a pair of hands delivering a cheeseburger deluxe, a necessary but forgettable part of their day. And that's how she liked it. Anonymity was a shield. It was in the quiet moments, the forgotten spaces, that she could breathe. The life she led now was a world away from the one she'd envisioned. She'd arrived in New York City 6 years ago, a wide-eyed 18-year-old from Ohio, with a guitar case in one hand and a scholarship to a second-tier music conservatory in the other. Her voice was her passport, a raw, ethereal instrument that could hush a room and crack a heart open. But New York, as it so often does, had a way of chewing up passports. The conservatory was expensive, life was more so. And then came the call that changed everything. Her younger sister Paige had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder. It was a cruel, creeping illness that required relentless, astronomically expensive treatments. Their parents, already working class and stretched thin, were drowning. Lily, without a second thought, dropped out of school. The dream of concert halls was traded for the reality of linoleum floors. Her guitar gathered dust in the corner of her tiny rent-controlled apartment, a silent monument to a different life. The only singing she did now was into a bottle of Windex after the last customer had gone. Tonight was one of those nights. A Tuesday, the graveyard shift. Rain slicked the streets outside, turning the neon signs into blurry watercolors on the diner's large windows. The clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m. The last customer, a weary taxi driver, had paid in cash and left her a crumpled $5 tip an hour ago. Now it was just Lily and the quiet hum of the refrigerators. She started her closing ritual. She stacked the salt and pepper shakers, refilled the sugar dispensers, and wiped down the sticky vinyl of the booth seats. As she worked, a melody began to unspool in her mind. It was a sad, simple tune she'd been piecing together for weeks, a song about ghosts, the ghosts of who you used to be, the ghosts of people you've lost. The lyrics were scribbled on a damp napkin tucked into her apron pocket. Her movement slowed as the song took hold. She grabbed a damp cloth and began wiping down the tables, her rhythm falling in line with the tempo in her head. She started to hum a low, breathy sound that was barely audible above the buzz of the fluorescent lights. Then, thinking she was utterly alone, cocooned in the solitude of the late hour, she let the words slip out. Streetlights paint the puddles gold, but all I see is grey. Her voice was not the polished, auto-tuned perfection that dominated the radio. It was something far more potent. It was flawed, fragile, and achingly real. It held the weariness of 1,000 shifts, the sting of unshed tears, the gut-wrenching love for a sick sister. It was the sound of a soul laid bare, and every face in every crowd just turns and walks away. She closed her eyes as she wiped down the last table lost in the catharsis. She leaned on the tabletop, her voice swelling, slightly filling the empty space of the diner. It was a lament, a prayer, a desperate whisper to an uncaring city. I'm singing to the ghosts of us, the echo of your name. She didn't see him. In the farthest, darkest booth, partially obscured by a coat rack, sat Dominic Davenport. He hadn't intended to stay. He'd come in an hour ago to escape the oppressive silence of his penthouse on Central Park West. At 58, Dominic was the kind of man who appeared on the covers of Forbes and Fortune, the stoic, iron-willed CEO of Davenport Holdings, a global conglomerate with tentacles in everything from logistics to tech to private equity. He was a titan of industry, a man whose every minute was worth more than Lily made in a year. But tonight, he was just a widower. It was the anniversary of his wife Helena's death. 5 years. Helena had been a singer, a classically trained soprano, who had given up her own burgeoning career to support his. He had promised her that one day, when the business was stable, he would build her the one thing she'd always wanted, a record label. A boutique label dedicated to finding and nurturing real, authentic artists, a refuge from the corporate pop machine. He'd kept his promise. 2 years after she was gone, he'd bought a legacy label on the verge of bankruptcy and rebranded it as Orion Records. It was a monument to her memory, a monument that was currently hemorrhaging money. His board of directors called it his vanity project. His head of A&R, the notoriously pragmatic Richard Caldwell, was constantly pushing for more marketable formulaic talent. Dominic had come to the diner seeking a ghost of his own. This was where he and Helena had their first date 35 years ago, when he was a struggling MBA student, and she was a waitress with a voice like an angel. He came here every year, on this date, sat in the same booth, and tried to feel her presence. Usually he felt nothing but the hollow echo of his own grief. But then he heard it. The voice. It cut through the fog of his sorrow like a beam of light. It wasn't Helena's voice. Hers was polished, ethereal, and pure. This voice was different. It was raw, earthy, steeped in pain. But it had the same soul-bearing honesty, the same ability to convey a lifetime of emotion in a single phrase. He froze his coffee cup halfway to his lips. He watched the waitress her back to him as she cleaned the tables. He saw the slump in her shoulders, the weariness in her posture, and he heard the heart-stopping beauty in her voice. This was it. This was the authenticity he'd been searching for, the very thing he'd created Orion Records to find. It was the kind of talent Richard Caldwell with his focus groups and market research would never discover. His hand moved automatically. He pulled out his sleek, black smartphone. He knew it was an invasion of privacy, a transgression. But the thought of that voice disappearing back into the ether, lost forever, was unbearable. He hit the record button. He didn't capture the whole song. Just 32 seconds. 32 seconds of raw, unadulterated magic. When she finished, the silence that followed felt profound. Lily sighed, straightened up, and turned. Her eyes scanned the diner, and for the first time, they landed on the figure in the back booth. A jolt of panic shot through her. How long had he been there? Had he heard her? Her cheeks flushed with a hot, deep embarrassment. Dominic met her gaze. He didn't smile. He simply looked at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He slowly stood up, a tall, imposing figure in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that looked wildly out of place amidst the chipped formica and cracked vinyl. He walked to the front counter, pulled a thick money clip from his pocket, and laid 3 crisp $100 bills on the counter. Lily stared at the money, her heart pounding. "Sir, your bill was only $8.50, she stammered. "Keep it," he said. His voice was a low, gravelly baritone. It held an authority that was absolute. He then reached into his suit jacket and produced a simple, elegant business card. It was made of thick, black cardstock with silver-embossed lettering. Dominic Davenport, CEO Davenport Holdings. Below the name was a single phone number. No address, no email. He slid the card across the counter toward her. "I own a company," he said, his eyes still locked on hers. "One of its divisions is a record label. You should call this number tomorrow. Ask for me." Lily's mind reeled. A record label. This had to be a joke, a cruel prank, or worse, some kind of creepy rich guy pickup line. She'd heard them all before. I don't understand," she said, backing away from the card as if it were hot. "Your voice," Dominic said simply. "I heard you singing. It deserves to be heard by more than just empty tables." And with that, he turned and walked out of the diner, leaving Lily standing in stunned silence, the smell of onions and coffee suddenly mingling with the impossible scent of opportunity. She looked from the $300 more than she'd make in a week to the black business card. Her cynical, world-weary brain screamed at her that it was a trick. No good thing ever came this easily. But another part of her, the small, bruised part, that still remembered how to dream, held on to his last words. She picked up the card. The weight of it in her hand felt real. It felt heavy, like a promise or a threat. The next 48 hours were a fever dream of anxiety and indecision. Lily slept in, Fitz the black business card sitting on her nightstand like a judge. She'd stare at it, then at the pile of overdue bills on her dresser, then at the photo of Paige smiling weakly from her hospital bed. The $300 from the diner had already been dispatched, 200 to the electric company, to stop the shut-off notice, 100 for a fraction of Paige's latest prescription copay. It was a drop in the ocean, a temporary reprieve that only highlighted the desperation of her situation. Her best friend and fellow waitress, Brenda, a pragmatic, no-nonsense woman in her late 40s, with a sharp tongue and a heart of gold, was unequivocal. "Are you insane?" Brenda demanded, slamming a pot of coffee onto the brewer during their shared morning shift. "A billionaire gives you his private number, and you're treating it like it's radioactive. Lily, people like us don't get chances like this. This isn't a chance. It's a goddamn winning lottery ticket that walked in and ordered a coffee. It's creepy, Bren," Lily argued, wiping down the counter with frantic energy. "Rich guys don't just hand out record deals in diners at 3 a.m. He wants something. Something I'm not willing to give." Brenda rolled her eyes so hard, Lily thought they might get stuck. "Oh, get your mind out of the gutter. He's old enough to be your father. Maybe he's just a music lover. Did you Google him?" Lily hadn't. She was afraid of what she might find. Brenda, however, had no such qualms. She pulled out her phone, her thumbs flying across the screen. Her eyes widened. "Holy Mother," she whispered. "Lily, this guy isn't just rich. He's Davenport rich. Davenport Holdings. They own like half the planet. And, get this, he owns Orion Records. It's real. His wife, Helena Davenport, was a famous singer before she died. The press called the label Dominic's tribute to her. The information hit Lily like a physical blow, a tribute to his dead wife. Suddenly the encounter in the diner felt less like a creepy pickup and more like something heavier, more complicated. It wasn't about her, not really. It was about his wife. Was he looking for a replacement, a sound-alike? The thought was even more unsettling. "See, this is different," Brenda insisted, shaking the phone at her. "This isn't some sleazy producer. This is a man building a monument. What have you got to lose?" "Your thrilling career in condiment management. Call the number, kid. If it's a scam, you hang up. If it's real, your life changes. Paige's life changes." Paige. It always came back to Paige. The thought of her sister, of the constant worry that shadowed their parents' faces, was the final push. That afternoon, with her heart hammering against her ribs, Lily sat on her lumpy couch and dialed the number. She expected a secretary, a labyrinth of automated menus. "Davenport." A familiar, gravelly voice answered on the second ring. Lily's breath hitched. It was him. Directly. Hello, Mr. Davenport. This is Lily O'Connell, the waitress from the Starlight Diner." There was a pause. For a terrifying second, she thought he'd forgotten that it was all a mistake. "Miss O'Connell," he said, his tone softening almost imperceptibly. "I was hoping you'd call. I'd like you to come to my office. Tomorrow. Say 11 a.m. Your office. The Davenport Tower, 57th and Park. My assistant will have your name at the security desk." He gave the instructions with such casual authority, as if he were asking her to pass the salt. To him it was just a meeting. To her it was an appointment with a different universe. The Davenport Tower was not a building. It was a statement. A sleek black monolith that clawed at the sky. It seemed to suck the very light from the street around it. Dressed in her one good outfit, a simple black dress she'd bought at a thrift store years ago, Lily felt like a stray cat wandering into a lion's den. The lobby was a cavern of marble and glass, filled with people in clothes that cost more than her rent. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the soft, confident clicks of expensive shoes. As promised, her name was at the desk. A silent security guard escorted her to a private elevator that shot upwards with stomach-lurching speed. The doors opened directly into the penthouse office. The room was bigger than her entire apartment building. One wall was a seamless pane of glass, offering a godlike view of Central Park. The space was minimalist, decorated in shades of grey, black, and chrome, with a few pieces of breathtakingly expensive abstract art. It was a space designed for power, not comfort. Dominic Davenport sat behind a desk the size of a small car. He stood as she entered, gesturing to one of the chairs opposite him. He was dressed in another immaculate suit, but today, in his own environment, he seemed less like an apparition and more like a king in his court. "Thank you for coming, Miss O'Connell," he said. "Please call me Lily." She managed her voice, barely a whisper. He nodded. He didn't waste time with small talk. He tapped a command into a sleek tablet on his desk, and from hidden speakers, a sound filled the room. Her voice. "I'm singing to the ghosts of us. The echo of your name." It was the 32-second recording from the diner. Hearing it played back in this sterile, magnificent room was a surreal out-of-body experience. It sounded so small, so fragile, yet so loud in the opulent silence. Lily flushed a wave of shame and exposure washing over her. "You recorded me." "I did," he admitted, his gaze unwavering. "It was an impulse I haven't regretted. I sent that recording to the head of my label." He tapped the tablet again, and a new voice filled the room, this one slick and professional. It was a voicemail. "Dom, it's Caldwell. Got the clip. Raw. Very raw. But there's something there. The undiscovered waitress angle is a publicist's dream. Bring her in. Let's see if the diamond is real or just a piece of glass. But for God's sake, get her out of that diner. The acoustics are terrible." Dominic switched it off. "That was Richard Caldwell. He runs Orion Records. He's pragmatic. He wants to meet you. He wants you to audition." An audition. For a real record label. The words hung in the air, shimmering with terrifying possibility. This was it. The dream she had buried alive was clawing its way out of the grave. "What do you want from me, Mr. Davenport?" Lily asked, her voice steady now. She needed to know. Dominic leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. For the first time, she saw a flicker of something other than power in his eyes. It was a deep, abiding weariness. A sadness. "What I want, Lily," he said slowly, "is to find artists who have something to say. My wife, Helena. She believed that music was the purest form of emotional truth. Our label is supposed to be a testament to that belief. But the industry is a machine that demands product, not truth. It grinds artists down, polishes them until they all sound the same." He looked out the window at the park below. "When I heard you singing in that diner, I didn't just hear a good voice. I heard something true. It was the first time I'd felt anything like it in a very long time." He paused, turning his gaze back to her. "I want to give that truth a platform. The question is, are you brave enough to take it?" The audition was scheduled for the following Friday. Lily spent the week in a daze working her shifts at the diner on autopilot. Brenda covered for her when she called in sick so she could practice her dusty guitar, finally rescued from its corner. She decided to sing her own song, the one from the diner, which she'd now titled "Ghosts of Us." It was the only thing that felt honest. Orion Records was housed in a trendy building in the meatpacking district, all exposed brick and brushed steel. It felt more like a tech startup than a music company. Lily was led into a small, acoustically perfect studio. Inside were two men. One was Dominic, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. The other was Richard Caldwell. Caldwell was the polar opposite of Dominic. Where Dominic was quiet intensity, Caldwell was slick energy. He was in his late 40s, with artfully silvered hair, a tailored blazer over a designer t-shirt and an expensive watch. He oozed a kind of predatory charm. "Lily, great to finally meet you," he said, shaking her hand. His grip was firm, his smile a little too wide. "Dom has been singing your praises. No pressure, of course." Lily's mouth was dry. She sat on the stool, provided guitar in her lap. The silence of the studio was more intimidating than the noisy diner had ever been. She took a deep breath, pictured Paige's face, and began to play. She sang the song from start to finish. She poured every ounce of her fear, her exhaustion, and her desperate flickering hope into the performance. When the last chord faded, the silence returned, thick and heavy. Dominic was looking at her with the same intense, unreadable expression as he had in the diner. Caldwell tapped a pen on his notepad, a cynical half-smile playing on his lips. "Okay," he said, drawing the word out. "It's raw. It's authentic. I get it. The story is fantastic. Waitress to wonder. The blogs will eat it up. The song is depressing. But we can fix that. We'll team you up with some of our top writers. The melody has potential, but the lyrics need a rewrite to be more universal. Less ghosts, more boyfriends. We'll need to work on your image, of course. The whole struggling artist thing is a good starting point. but we need to glamorize it. Make it aspirational. Lily felt a chill creep up her spine, fix her song, change her image. He was talking about her life, her pain as if it were a faulty product in need of repackaging. "My song is about my—" she started, but Caldwell cut her off. I know it's personal, and that's great for inspiration," he said dismissively. "But art is art, and business is business. We're in the business of selling records, Lily, and sad doesn't sell. Hope sells, empowerment sells. We'll find your brand." Dominic finally spoke, his voice cutting through Caldwell's smooth patter. "The song stays as it is, Richard. That's the point." Caldwell shot a quick, annoyed look at Dominic before turning his smile back on Lily. "Of course, a B-side, perhaps. An album track. We'll figure it out. The point is you have a phenomenal instrument." He stood up, extending his hand again. "Welcome to Orion Records, Lily. We'll have a contract drawn up and sent to you by Monday. It will be very generous." Lily walked out of the building and into the bright afternoon sun, her head spinning. She had done it. She had passed the test. She was being offered a record deal. It was a dream come true. So why did it feel like she had just made a deal with the devil? The contract that arrived via messenger on Monday confirmed her fears. It was a thick, terrifying document, full of legalese she couldn't possibly comprehend. But she could understand the numbers. The advance was staggering. It was enough money to ensure Paige received the best possible medical care for the rest of her life. It was life-changing, generation-altering money. In exchange, the contract gave Orion Records control over everything: her music, her publishing, her image, her name. They would own her. She sat with the contract in her lap for a long time. She thought of Caldwell's slick smile and his talk of fixing her song. She thought of Dominic's sad eyes and his talk of truth. They were two sides of the same coin, two men who wanted something from her voice. Then she looked at the picture of Paige again, her sister's brave, tired smile. With a trembling hand, Lily O'Connell picked up a pen and signed away her ghost. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of surreal, disorienting change. The day after she signed the contract, the first wire transfer from Orion Records hit her bank account. Lily stared at the number on her banking app, her breath catching in her throat. It felt like a typo, an impossible string of zeros. That afternoon she made 2 phone calls. The first was to the hospital to set up a private consultation with the top specialist in the country for Paige's condition. The second was to the Starlight Diner, where she quit her job. Leaving her apron on the counter for the last time felt like shedding a skin. Orion Records moved quickly. They put her up in a corporate apartment in Chelsea, a sleek, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. It was beautiful, sterile, and utterly soulless. She would wander its empty rooms, the silence a stark contrast to the constant noise of her old apartment and the diner. She felt like she was living in someone else's life. The makeover, as Richard Caldwell cheerfully called it, began immediately. He introduced her to a team of people whose job it was to remold her. There was a stylist named Antoine, who declared her thrift store wardrobe tragically authentic and replaced it with racks of designer clothes she was terrified to even touch. There was a nutritionist who put her on a strict diet of kale smoothies and quinoa bowls, and a physical trainer who worked her until her muscles screamed. "We're not just selling a voice, we're selling a package, a brand," Caldwell explained during one of their early meetings in his glass-walled office. "The story is gold, the diamond in the rough, Waitress. But the audience needs to see the after. They need to see the transformation. It's aspirational." Lily, feeling more like a show pony than an artist, tried to push back. I thought Mr. Davenport wanted authenticity. Caldwell laughed, a smooth, practiced sound. Dominic is the heart of this label, Lily. I'm the head. He finds the soul, I figure out how to sell it. Don't worry, we'll keep you authentic. Just a more polished, marketable version of it. The real battle began in the recording studio. Caldwell had paired her with a team of chart-topping Swedish producers known for their slick, radio-friendly hits. They were polite, efficient, and treated songwriting like a mathematical equation. They listened to her song, Ghosts of Us, nodded thoughtfully, and then presented her with their improved version. It was unrecognizable. They had taken her quiet, melancholic ballads and twisted it into an overproduced pop anthem, complete with a thumping dance beat and vapid, cliché-ridden lyrics about overcoming a bad breakup. They had kept a single line from her original chorus, a hollow echo of what it once was. Lily was horrified. This isn't my song. It's a hit song. One of the producers, a man named Max, corrected gently. It tests through the roof with the target demographic. I can't sing this, she said, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and panic. There's no feeling in it. It's empty. Caldwell, who was overseeing the session, stepped in. Lily, every new artist has to compromise. You have to build a fan base first with something accessible, something commercial. Once you have a #1 hit, then you have the leverage to do your passion project, your sad little ghost song. That's how the game is played. Mr. Davenport said, Dominic is a patron of the arts. Caldwell cut in, his voice hardening slightly. I'm a businessman. His money pays for this studio, but my results keep the lights on. Now let's get in the booth and make a hit. Shall we? The recording sessions were torture. Lily would stand in the vocal booth, the saccharine backing track pumping through her headphones, and try to sing words that felt like ash in her mouth. Her voice, the instrument that had captivated a billionaire, felt foreign and thin. The raw emotion that was its hallmark was gone, smothered under layers of synthetic beats and meaningless lyrics. The producers would ask for more energy, more pop, and she would try, but it sounded forced and hollow. Dominic was a distant presence during this time. He was often traveling for his other businesses, and when he was in New York, he seemed to defer to Caldwell on the creative front, much to Lily's dismay. She'd see him in the hallways, and he'd offer a kind, encouraging smile, but he seemed unaware of the war being waged over her artistic soul. Or perhaps she feared he just didn't care as much as she thought he did. He had found the truth. Now he was letting his team package it for sale. The thought was a bitter pill to swallow. Her only solace was Paige. With the money from the advance, Paige was now getting the best care imaginable. She had been moved to a top-tier private facility, and her new doctors were optimistic, talking about new experimental treatments that could potentially put her illness into remission. During their daily video calls, Paige looked better than she had in years. The dark circles under her eyes were fading, and her smile was genuine. I heard a clip of your new song online, Paige said one evening, her voice buzzing with excitement. A marketing intern at Orion had leaked a 10-second snippet of the chorus. It's so catchy. You sound like a real pop star, Lily. Lily forced a smile. Yeah, it's different. Different, it's amazing. I'm so proud of you. You're doing it, Lily. You're really doing it. The guilt was a physical weight in Lily's chest. She was doing it for Paige, and Paige was getting better. That had to be enough. She had to make it enough. So she swallowed her artistic pride, went back into the studio, and tried to be the pop star they wanted her to be. It was during this period of strained compromise that the ghost from her past chose to reappear. She was leaving the recording studio late one night, exhausted and disheartened, when a man stepped out of the shadows of the building's entrance. He was handsome in a sharp, predatory way, with slicked-back dark hair and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Lilybug," he said, using a nickname that made her blood run cold. It was Gavin Croft. Gavin had been her first love, her first manager, her first everything back in Ohio. He was a musician in a local band, older, charismatic, and utterly convinced of his own genius. He had seen the potential in Lily's voice and had taken her under his wing. At first it was intoxicating. He wrote songs for her, booked her gigs in small bars, and told her they were going to be famous together. But his encouragement soon curdled into control. He criticized what she wore, who she talked to, and how she sang. He was possessive, manipulative, and deeply insecure. He'd convinced her to sign a management contract he'd written himself on his laptop, a document that she, in her youthful naivety, had signed without a second thought. Their relationship imploded when she discovered he was cheating on her, and she'd fled to New York, leaving him and his suffocating ambition behind. She hadn't seen or heard from him in 6 years. "Gavin," she said, her voice tight. "What are you doing here?" "I saw the article," he said, holding up his phone. A music blog had run a small piece, Orion's mystery waitress, Billionaire, Davenport's latest discovery. It featured a paparazzi photo of her leaving the studio. "Big shot now, huh? Davenport Tower, Orion Records. You've come a long way from playing open mic nights at the Dusty Boot." "What do you want?" she asked, already knowing the answer. He smiled that cold, familiar smile. "I just want what's mine, Lily. We had a deal. I discovered you. I nurtured you. I wrote your first songs. And we had a contract." That wasn't a real contract, Gavin. We were kids." "It was real enough," he said, his voice losing its charming edge and taking on a menacing hardness. "It's a legally binding document. It entitles me to 50% of all your musical earnings. For life." Panic seized her. 50%. The money for Paige. The entire foundation of this new, fragile life she was building. "You're insane," she whispered. "I'm not giving you a dime." "Oh, I think you will," he said, stepping closer. "Because if you don't, I'm sure the tabloids would love to hear about us, about our passionate history. I'm sure I could even dig up some old photos. Maybe that video from that weekend at the lake. You were pretty wild back then, weren't you? Not quite the innocent waitress your new billionaire benefactor thinks you are. It would be a shame if your aspirational brand got tarnished before it even launched." He was bluffing. He had to be. But the mention of the video sent a jolt of pure ice through her veins. She felt dizzy. "You wouldn't," she breathed. "Try me," he said, his smile returning. "My lawyer will be in touch with your new friends at Orion. Or we can handle this quietly, you and me. You start making regular deposits into my account, and your secrets stay safe. Your call, Lilybug." He winked, then turned and sauntered down the street, disappearing into the New York night. Lily stood frozen on the sidewalk, the city lights blurring around her. She was trapped. The gilded cage she had willingly entered had just revealed its true nature. It wasn't just her art that was being held hostage anymore. It was her past, her reputation, her entire future. And the man holding the key was the one ghost she thought she had left behind for good. Gavin's threat hung over Lily like a shroud, poisoning everything. The sleek Chelsea apartment no longer felt like a luxury. It felt like a prison with a better view. Every ping from her phone sent a jolt of anxiety through her, convinced it was him or his lawyer. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford, her nights filled with nightmares where Gavin's smug face morphed with Richard Caldwell's, both demanding a piece of her she didn't know how to give. She tried to handle it herself. She blocked Gavin's number, but he simply used new ones. He sent emails with veiled threats and old photos of them together, reminders of his hold over her. He didn't want to go through the label yet. He preferred the direct, personal terror. It was his style. He wanted her to crumble, to come to him begging. Her work at the studio deteriorated from difficult to disastrous. The pop song they were trying to force out of her, now titled Starlight Glow, felt more obscene than ever. How could she sing about a carefree, glittering night when she felt like she was drowning in darkness? "What is going on with you?" Richard Caldwell demanded, his voice sharp through the studio intercom after another failed take. "You sound like you're singing a eulogy. I need energy. I need sparkle. My 12-year-old niece has more conviction singing into her hairbrush." Lily pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the vocal booth, closing her eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm just tired." "Tired doesn't sell 1,000,000 downloads," Caldwell snapped. "I've got a release schedule, a marketing budget the size of a small country's GDP, and a board of directors breathing down my neck about Dominic's pet project. We are launching this single in 6 weeks, with a performance at the label's annual showcase. You need to get your head in the game, or I swear to God I will find someone who can." The showcase. It was the first she was hearing of it. A live performance in front of industry executives, press, and influencers. The thought made her stomach clench with a cold, hard dread. She felt utterly alone. She couldn't tell Brenda, who would just worry and be powerless to help. She couldn't tell her parents and add to their burdens, and she certainly couldn't tell anyone at the label. Admitting that her grifter ex-boyfriend had come back to blackmail her would be professional suicide. Caldwell would see her as damaged goods, a liability. The contract she signed likely had a morality clause that she would be in breach of if Gavin released any sordid details, true or not. They could drop her, and the money for Paige would stop. The one person she considered telling was Dominic. In her more desperate moments, she imagined confessing everything to him in his quiet, powerful office. She imagined him fixing it with a single phone call, making the problem disappear. But the fear held her back. He had sought her out for her truth and authenticity. What would he think of her if he knew her past was so messy, so tainted? He had placed her on a pedestal, this pure, undiscovered talent from a diner. The fall from that pedestal would be a long one. She was afraid he would look at her not with sympathy, but with disappointment. That she realized would hurt more than anything. Her reticence created a chasm between them. Dominic, noticing the strain in her voice and the fear in her eyes, tried to reach out. "Is everything all right, Lily?" he asked one afternoon, finding her staring blankly at a sheet of music in one of the studio lounges. "Richard tells me the sessions are proving difficult." "I'm fine," she lied, forcing a smile that felt brittle. "Just new to all this. It's a lot to take in." Dominic studied her face, his gaze perceptive. "The music business can be a brutal place. It can make you feel like you're losing pieces of yourself. If you ever feel that way, I want you to tell me." My wife, Helena. She struggled with that too. It was the perfect opening. Her heart screamed at her to tell him to unburden herself, but the fear was a physical gag in her throat. He saw her as a reflection of his late wife's artistic integrity. To admit something so ugly as Gavin's blackmail felt like spitting on that memory. "I'm okay," she said, her voice thin. "Really? I just need to work harder." He looked like he didn't believe her a flicker of hurt, crossing his features before being replaced by his usual stoic mask. "Very well," he said, his tone cooler than before. He felt shut out, and she had been the one to close the door. Gavin, meanwhile, escalated his campaign of terror. He sent a package to her apartment. Inside was a single cheap beer-stained napkin. Scrawled on it were the lyrics to a song he had written for her years ago. It was a message: I own your past, I own your beginnings, and I can take your future. The final turn of the screw came a week before the showcase. An official-looking letter arrived at her apartment from a law firm she'd never heard of, Croft & Associates, which she suspected was just Gavin, and a rented post office box. The letter formally restated his claim to 50% of her earnings based on their original management contract, and warned that if a settlement was not reached within 72 hours, legal proceedings would be initiated, and a press release detailing their long and complicated personal and professional history would be distributed to major media outlets. It was an ultimatum. Pay him off before the showcase, or he would detonate her career on the launch pad. That night, Lily hit her breaking point. She sat on the floor of her cavernous apartment, the lawyer's letter in one hand and her phone in the other, scrolling through photos of Porge. Her sister looked so happy, so healthy. This new life, this chance at health, was all because of the deal Lily had made. A deal that was now crumbling around her. She felt the walls of the gilded cage closing in. Caldwell was on one side, demanding a perfect pop star performance she couldn't deliver. Gavin was on the other, threatening to expose a past that would destroy her. And Dominic, the man who had started it all, was a distant, disappointed figure she had pushed away. She was trapped. There was no way out. For the first time, she seriously considered the unthinkable, walking away from it all. She could disappear. Take what money was left in her account, go somewhere quiet, and give up the dream for good. It would mean a return to a life of struggle, of constant worry for Paige, but it would be a life free of Gavin Croft and Richard Caldwell. It would be a life where her voice was her own again, even if the only ones who heard it were the ghosts in her memory. She stood up and walked to the closet, pulling out a duffel bag. She began to pack her movements, numb and mechanical. Clothes, a toothbrush, the picture of Paige. She paused, her hand hovering over the dusty guitar case in the corner. She couldn't bring herself to touch it. It was the source of all this joy and all this pain. She zipped up the bag, leaving the guitar behind. She would call her parents, tell them there had been a complication, that the money would run out. She would figure something else out. She always did. With the bag slung over her shoulder, she walked to the door, her heart a cold, dead weight in her chest. She could just leave. No one would even know she was gone until she missed the sound check for the showcase. By then, she'd be on a bus to anywhere. She put her hand on the doorknob, the cold metal, a final, shocking point of contact with this life she was about to abandon. Her hand was on the cold brass doorknob, the duffel bag a dead weight on her shoulder. This was it. The escape. One turn and she could disappear back into the anonymity she once craved. It was in that final, heart-wrenching moment of surrender that her phone buzzed on the hall table. She ignored it. It buzzed again, insistent. With a sigh of irritation, she glanced at the screen. It was a text from Brenda. Heard the showcase is next week. Break a leg superstar. Don't forget the little people when you're accepting your Grammy. The simple, unvarnished kindness of the message pierced through the fog of her despair. Brenda. The Starlight Diner. A life of struggle, yes, but one of genuine connection. The duffel bag slid from her shoulder and hit the marble floor with a dull thud. She sank down beside it, and the tears she had choked back for weeks finally came a raw, ragged storm of grief and frustration. Running away was just another way of letting Gavin win. He had silenced her once in Ohio. She couldn't let him do it again. Through her sobs, a new feeling began to burn anger. A clean, hot rage at Gavin at Caldwell and at herself for letting fear dictate her life. This was not just about a record deal anymore. It was about the promise she'd made to her sister Paige. She knew what Brenda would say. "You have a billionaire in your corner, you fool, use him." The next morning, Lily walked into the Davenport Tower, looking not like a rising star, but like a soldier coming from the front lines. Her eyes were puffy, and her clothes were simple, but her jaw was set with a new, hard-won resolve. She didn't wait for an invitation, striding past a stunned assistant, and directly into Dominic Davenport's penthouse office. He was on a call, but the moment he saw her face, he cut it short. "Lily, what's happened?" he asked, rising from his chair, his voice laced with concern. "I have to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "And you might fire me after, but you need to know the real truth." She laid it all out, a torrent of confession about Gavin, the manipulative past, the worthless contract, signed by a naive girl, and the vicious blackmail that had haunted her for weeks. She explained the threats, the fear that had crippled her in the studio, and the reason she had pushed him away. She finished breathless, expecting to see disappointment or disgust in his eyes. Instead, she saw a cold fury. But it wasn't directed at her. "He threatened you," Dominic said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "While you were supposed to be under my protection, and you carried this burden alone." "I was afraid," she whispered. "I thought you'd see me as trouble." He rounded the desk until he was standing before her. "Lily, the failure here is mine. I put you in this shark tank and didn't realize a predator from your past had followed you in. I am so sorry." He turned back to his desk, picked up the phone, and his voice was steel. "Get me Robert Sterling in legal, now." The meeting with the head of his legal team was brutally efficient. Lily watched as the monster that had terrorized her was reduced to a legal nuisance. Amateur-hour blackmail. Sterling, a man with eyes like chips of ice, concluded after reviewing Gavin's letters. "The contract is unenforceable. We'll have a restraining order by lunch, and a team of investigators will uncover every dirty secret this man has. He won't just go away. He'll be paying us." The immense weight on Lily's chest lifted, leaving her almost lightheaded. "The showcase," she said quietly. "Richard is ready to drop me." Dominic looked at her, and a rare, genuine smile touched his lips. "Forget Richard. You just worry about your performance, and you sing whatever you want. Sing your song, Lily, the one I heard in the diner. Remind them all why you're here." The night of the showcase, the air in the trendy Brooklyn venue was thick with industry buzz. Backstage, Lily felt a clean, electric hum of anticipation. She had shed the pop star costume for a simple black dress. She felt like herself again. Richard Caldwell stormed into her dressing room, his face a mask of thunder. "I just saw the set list you're cutting. Starlight Glow for that. Dirge." "Are you trying to commit career suicide?" Lily met his gaze calmly. "I'm singing my song, Richard." "This is Davenport's artistic folly, isn't it?" he seethed. "This will kill all momentum." As Lily walked toward the stage, she saw him, Gavin leaning against the bar, a menacing smirk on his face. He thought he still had her. He caught her eye, but then froze. Two large, stone-faced men in discreet suits had materialized at his elbows. One leaned in, whispered something, and the color drained from Gavin's face, his smirk dissolving into pure panic. A moment later, he was being escorted out a side door, a ghost finally exorcised. A single spotlight found her, as she walked not to the center microphone, but to a grand piano on the side of the stage. A hush fell over the room. She saw the expectant faces of critics, the furious one of Caldwell in the wings, and then standing by a pillar, she saw Dominic. He gave her a single, almost imperceptible nod of support. She took a breath. Her fingers found the keys, and the simple, haunting melody of Ghosts of Us filled the opulent space. And then she sang. It was the same song from the diner, but it had been transformed. The sadness was now threaded with steel, the weariness underpinned by a profound resilience. She poured all the pain and fear of the past few weeks into her voice, but also the soaring relief of being free. It was not a performance. It was a testimony, raw, flawed, and breathtakingly true. When the last note faded, the silence in the room was absolute. It was a sacred, stunned stillness that lasted for a full 5 seconds. Then a single person began to clap. Slowly, deliberately. It was Dominic. The sound broke the spell. Another person joined in, then a dozen, and then the entire room erupted in a tidal wave of applause. It was thunderous, genuine, and overwhelming. The industry elite were on their feet, their cynical facades shattered. In the wings, Richard Caldwell could only stare, completely stunned, the sound of authentic artistry, drowning out the sound of his carefully laid marketing plans. Lily looked out at the sea of faces, a slow, brilliant smile spreading across her own, as tears of pure, unadulterated joy streamed down her cheeks. She hadn't just saved her career. She had reclaimed her soul. In front of the whole world, she had finally found her voice again, and she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, this was only the beginning. Lily O'Connell didn't just get a record deal. She found her power. She learned that authenticity isn't something you can sell or manufacture, it's something you have to fight for. And Dominic Davenport, in searching for a voice to honor a memory, found a living, breathing artist who reminded him what it meant to believe in something again. Their story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest strength is found in our most vulnerable moments, and the most honest song is the one you sing when you think no one is listening. What did you think of Lily's journey? Could you feel the pressure she was under? What would you have done if you were in her shoes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story of struggle, art, and redemption moved you, please give this video a like. It really helps our channel grow. Share it with a friend who loves a story with real heart. And most importantly, if you want more dramatic stories that feel like real life, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss what's coming next. Thank you for listening.